Hi everyone, welcome to People's channel again. You can see us every day on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. You can join us on BritAsianBuzz.com and we're on live every single day. You can ring in for requests, whatever you want, 01204 435 825. Today we've got a very important guest with us, a highly respected politician. Someone who's been in politics as an MP since 1997 in Bolton North East. Somebody who's actually voted against the Iraq War when it was not popular to do so. And there's a lot of good things said about this man, so I'm going to put him on the spot. And welcome, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hanif.
And I'd like to start by asking, what prompted you to go into politics all them years ago?
Well, it seems quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
I left school at...
Without showing your age?
Yeah, I will not mention when it was, but I left school when I was 16 and got involved in the engineering industry and local industry. I worked at a company right in the middle of my constituency. And I became a member of the union and got involved in the union. And I thought a lot of good work needed to be done in the union, helping people. People were getting injured and killed, and there were poor wages and no holidays. And there was just such a lot to do.
Unions were a big thing then.
Unions were a big thing, and there were a lot to do. And it just occurred to me at one point that there were more people than just people in the unions who needed help. And there were more people that suffered injustice. So I joined the Labour Party and then quickly became a councillor. And then I was supported very well by the union, who pressed me to become a member of Parliament.
Was it always going to be the Labour Party for you, David?
Probably. My parents were in the Labour Party, weren't in the Labour Party, but my parents were always Labour supporters. So I was brought up with my dad shouting at the television about, in the same way that probably, other people's dads shouting at the television. And no doubt I shouting at the television and David Cameron at this moment. So I was brought up with all of that, and I always wanted to probably support Labour, but I didn't join the Labour Party until I was in my early 20s, and then I became a councillor and eventually a member of Parliament.
But you were first a councillor in Bury, weren't you?
I was a councillor in Bury in those days, and because I was born in Bury, and then I got selected for Parliament in Bury originally in '87, and then I got selected in the early 1990s here in Bolton. Because I worked here in Bolton.
Right, and I remember, and I was young, I remember when you first stood in Bolton, there was a very narrow victory for Peter Burnham, wasn't there? And it was talking only
187.
How do you recover from something
like
that?
It's a number I've never forgotten. It's obsessed me really. In some sense, it's a good thing. Because it taught me that you've got to do the job properly, and every vote matters, and people matter. And I think it made me much more professional in fighting elections.
Less complacent.
Well, even now, people now say, "Oh, you'll be okay," and I always say that's what they said in 1992 that I'd be okay, and I lost it very narrowly. So I've never quite recovered from it.
It's always there, isn't it? Yeah.
It's always on my mind that you've got to pay attention to absolutely everybody. And because in the end, that everybody has a vote. And
but just picking up on that, David. Like you said that everybody says, "Oh, you'll be all right." It's something that we hear quite a lot of because you just said even on this side of town where you don't stand, people say you're a good bloke. You've obviously cultivated this relationship with your constituents over the years, and many of the constituents that we've asked about yourself, because obviously we know you're coming on the show, as are two other constituents, potential MPs tomorrow. And we do like to go out and ask on the street what people think of Mudassir and Yasmin and yourself. And we did get a lot of positive vibe out there, even from people who aren't really into the Labour Party, who said, well, we're not that much into the Labour Party, but we'll vote for David, he's a good bloke. Where do you think you've got this from? Is it because of the Iraq War, and is it because of decisions you've made?
Well, I'm pleased. I feel humbled by it sometimes that people are supportive of me, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's come over a number of years, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think if if you pay attention to the job and do the job properly, then even people that don't necessarily support your political party will support you. Not in massive numbers, but it does make a difference, and I think it's really hard work and commitment to the question of principle. You see, I'm of the view that people should go into politics for the right reasons, not just to further a political career. I think that one of the things that's wrong with the Houses of Parliament is that there are too many people who who go to university, get a political degree, go work for a Member of Parliament, and then become a Member of Parliament.
Yeah.
And I really do think that what we need in Parliament are all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, but the one thing they should have in common is that they should want to help the community and not help themselves. I hope that that's what I've tried to do, really, over the years, not be a Member of Parliament for me, but a Member of Parliament for the community.
Yeah, I mean, we've put that in there, really, because when we have gone asking about a lot of people, even councillors who are standing out there in the community, because we're a community media station, and we've been doing our research, a lot of people have said, all politicians, they're all dirty, can't trust a politician, they're all like this. But every now and then, you come across a character. I mean, you had that guy with the white suit, didn't you? He became an independent MP.
Yeah.
Do you remember? He used to be a presenter.
Bell, yeah.
Yeah, and he was in a white suit all the time.
Yeah, the man in the white suit, yeah.
That's right. And he was seen as a clean politician.
Well, he made his name, didn't he, when Members of Parliament were going to prison for expenses fraud, and quite rightly going to prison for expenses fraud. And I think, that period did politics a lot of damage. Lots of people felt that all politicians were tied with the same corrupt brush, when in truth they weren't. I don't say that just about the politician. I think the truth is that right across the political spectrum, Tories and Liberals and Scots Nats, the vast majority of them were honest people. But there was a fair number who weren't honest and deserved to go to prison. And I think it did us all damage.
And it leaves that flavour in the mouth of the public.
I think so.
Politicians are all bent and, you can't trust a politician. But, you've come out quite okay in that one, because, according to what we're seeing out there, quite a lot of people are saying, you're a man of principle. But just, going back to that Iraq war, it was at a time when everybody was saying, yeah, we've got to go to Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction, and, it was like, if you weren't one of, the supporters of this, Blair's Babies Iraq war, you were like modern. At that time, you stood your ground and you said that.
Well, I knew quite a lot about it. I was kind of senior member on the Defence Committee, and so I'd read everything about it. I knew what was going on as far as Iraq was concerned, and I really couldn't see the reason as to why we should go to war with Iraq. I mean, the Al Qaeda had bombed the Twin Towers, but that had nothing to do with Saddam Hussein. Nothing to do with Saddam Hussein.
What about towing the line with America? Was it not just because...
Well, I think...
Did you not feel we should have towed the line with America?
I didn't think that... I thought that Harold Wilson in the 1960s refused to go into the Vietnam War with the Americans at that point. And to his credit, he kept Britain out of the Vietnam War. And I think that, I thought Blair should have kept us out of the Iraq War. And I told Blair personally that. I met Blair on a number of occasions because, as I say, I was the senior Labour member on the Defence Committee, and they really wanted me to vote for the Iraq War from that point of view.
And a brave decision, if I say so.
Well, I tried to convince him that he was wrong. I remember telling him that I said it's the biggest political mistake of your lifetime. And he just kind of did that thing with his cuffs, just pulled his cufflinks and that.
Should have got that in writing, David.
Couldn't have. Well, I should. Actually, I had some copies. I've still got some copies of that report, Weapons of Mass Destruction. And at that time, and now I wish I'd got Tony Blair to sign one of those, because if I'd got him to sign that report on Weapons of Mass Destruction, I think I'd get £200,000 on it.
You were very politically astute at that time on that particular decision, weren't you, really? Because that then came about that,
well, it was proven. Eventually, they all said you were right, but at the time they didn't say you were right. I mean, there was immense amount of pressure.
And it must have been a bit of a gamble, as in like, your political career, it might have stunted it if Blair was up there still, and you'd have been seen by him probably as, you know, one of the guys who didn't toe the line. So,
and they don't like it when you say you were wrong, and they voted for the Iraq War, and I voted against the Iraq War, and that made them look even worse than that. So they don't like it, and it's not exactly, you know, it's not a good career decision.
No.
But I'm not in politics for career decisions. I'm in politics to do the right thing.
And I think that's what shows, you know, when we've gone round to the constituents, you know, some of them have said, like, man of principle and that. And I think, you know, that Iraq War thing was certainly within the BME communities as well, really well recognised and appreciated. I don't know, even in the wider community, you mentioned Vietnam, and how many war veterans came back after that, and you know, when it's like Muhammad Ali didn't go to Vietnam.
No, I mean, Muhammad Ali
he was wanted, and you know, he was shamed, and they were doing all these posters and chants against him, and then afterwards, you know, when it was flavour of the month again, everybody said, "Oh no, Muhammad Ali was right." Well, I think it's similar.
I'm glad you made that comparison, because Muhammad Ali was one of my heroes as a child. I mean, I thought he was a fantastic boxer, but he really did stand out there. And at the time, he was completely shunned in America for what he did.
And he stood on his ground.
In the long term, everybody recognises that he was absolutely right about the Vietnam War.
There we go. What about your family life? You've got 2 lads.
I've got 2 lads.
You've got grandchildren?
I've got 5 grandchildren. I've got 2 sons who avoid politics like the plague. They're committed. I mean, they're very supportive from the point of view of the Labour Party. But you know, people said, "Do they want to be politicians?" Well, they've seen me throughout my life and said they'd rather stay out of politics.
How do you balance family life, and is it a lot different than when your children were smaller?
I think it's difficult. It's difficult. My wife often says that the only way we could have had a married life was for her to get involved in politics, and that's what she did. She wasn't particularly driven by politics, but I got involved in the Labour Party, and it kind of becomes a social thing as well.
I know you need, and we've got to mention him. She's a great lady and very supportive of you. And you know, they say that saying about, you know, behind every great man there's a great woman. I think we've got to give her credit too, otherwise David might not give his tea on top. But yeah, no, that's really good. So David, what's this strapline you have anyway? It's all right.
Well, I mean, you were talking about why I like to see myself as Bolton's man in Westminster, not Westminster's man in Bolton. And I'm kind of instructed by my supporters in the
Bolton's man in Westminster,
not Westminster's man in Bolton.
Right.
And I do think that that's really important. That I should be seen. You know, I do want to be seen and be someone who represents Bolton in Westminster, not someone who comes from London to tell people in the north what to do. I'm very committed to the.
Because there is that gulf, isn't there, where people say, "Oh well, local issues, it's councillors." Because you know, being an ex-councillor myself, I know about that, and you know, they look at MPs and they think, "Well, they don't do with us. They're all to do with Westminster. They're all to do with Parliament."
I think the north of England gets left out of it as well. You know, there's an obsession with Scotland at the moment because they're so important from the point of view of votes. SNP are important, and you know, they've had the yes/no vote, and so there's been an obsession with Scotland, and the south of England, around the capital and around London, seems to get all the resources.
North-south divided.
There's been no recession in London, I can assure you. They've been building properties in London all the way through, whereas the north's had a pretty tough time.
And all the statistics have shown that, all these researches, university researches, there's so many independent reports now, they've proven there's a north-south divide. So what are they doing to act on that?
Well, I think we need members of Parliament from the north to fight our corner.
Because the North West Assembly and all that's been scrapped now.
Well, the North West Assembly's gone. I mean, there's talk about devolution of some power to Greater Manchester by way of the Mayor, the Greater Manchester Mayor.
Like London, we'd have a Mayor
a
of
bit
Manchester.
like London, but I'm not so sure that I'm committed to that model. And in any event, what is most important is however we devolve power, the public should be in favour of it. So I'm going to fight quite hard to ensure that we get some kind of referendum on how we devolve power.
And just for the layman, because obviously devolve, it's a political word and not everybody understands it.
I mean, bringing power from London
to local
letting us make decisions here in the north that can be made in the north.
For the north.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I've always taken the view that if you can make a decision about Bolton, in Bolton, that doesn't affect anybody outside, then the people of Bolton should decide on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's what we're seeing in Scotland. That Scotland's saying, let us make decisions concerning Scotland and this side of the land here. And I think the Northwest could do the same, couldn't they?
I think the Scots are absolutely right to do that. Decisions that affect only Scotland should be made in Scotland. But I also would argue that decisions that affect all of the north of England should be made in the north of England.
Yeah. So, do you think there'll be a replacement Northwest Assembly type thing ever, or
I don't see how you can continue with Scotland having more and more powers, and Wales and Northern Ireland having more and more powers, and completely leaving England out. I think there's got to be some movement to put power in the regional parts of England. Yeah. So I think it's inevitable. It'll be difficult to decide exactly what model it is, because England's clearly a lot bigger place. And
it'll give people more say, won't it, obviously?
I think so, and I think it will go somewhere to involving people in politics as well. Too many people feel remote from politics, and we really need to involve people in the decisions that
it's something we touched on with community media interview that we did about 3 weeks ago, and it was mentioned about politics and how many people voter apathy, and how many people are disenfranchised with the whole political system. And is there scope for politics and the political system to be taught in schools? As we mentioned in that debate about the environment, and how the environment wasn't a big issue in the 70s, not so big in the 80s. Late 80s it became a big issue. The government addressed it by taking it into the schools, primary school level. I mean, we've been around doing our research, and with all the communities, and we're saying to them, do you know what a ward is? Do you know how many councillors per ward? And David, you'd be shocked at the average laywoman. They don't know.
Well, I go into schools and speak to schools. Whenever I'm asked, I go into schools and talk to children in school. And you would be surprised of the level of understanding that they have. But the truth is that one of the problems we have is that you teach kids in school. They're 18 by the time they're able to vote, and sometimes even older, because an election doesn't come up. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I've come around to the view that we should go for votes at 16. If young people are able to go to work at 16 and pay taxes at 16, we should allow them to vote at 16.
Do you think that'll happen?
I think it's Labour policy, and I think it will happen. And what I do think is important about it is there should be a continuity between education and voting. We shouldn't have people leave school at 16 or 18 and then sometime later vote. It'd be a good thing if people voted close to their education. And lots of people said to me, "What's it matter? You're all the same, and it doesn't make any difference."
Well, people say that.
People say that all the time. I hear them say that. But the truth is, I always say, well, it doesn't matter how many people vote, you still get a politician elected.
That's true.
You can be opposed to politics. You can say, I'm not bothering. What all we're doing is letting somebody else decide who the politician is, because one always gets elected. If I sometimes say, if nobody voted, I would vote for me, and I would be the politician. Now that can't be right. The public have got to have a say in it, because politics affects every aspect of our lives.
It does. I used to say that myself when I was a politician that short time. I used to say that to my neighbours and that, and a lot of them would say, yeah, but what difference will it make? It's either Labour or Conservative going to get in power. And, on our way down here, we touched on it, and I think with this hung parliament, like it or not, it's created that little bit of extra interest, because I think people of my generation used to think, well, either you're going to get the Tories in or you're going to get Labour in. But you've actually got a Tory Lib Dem, which is a very, very unusual partnership really. Given the background of them two parties.
People were surprised when the Liberals went with the Conservatives. And someone said to me the other night, he said, well, I voted for the Liberals last election. He said, and tactical voting let me down. I said, tactical voting didn't let you down, it was the Liberals that let you down. It was Nick Clegg who let you down, because nobody expected that Nick Clegg would go with the Conservatives when people voted before the last election.
But without getting into Nick Clegg and, Lib Dems and Labour policies and values, I mean, just staying on that a minute though, David, do you think that will garner more interest? I mean, this election at the moment, the polls are showing it's looking like another...
It's looking neck and neck, it's looking very tight.
Yeah, so if it's another hung parliament...
Well, if it's a hung parliament...
Who's going with who? Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. That's why the official line from Labour's got to be, we don't want a hung parliament, we want an overall majority. It'll be a stronger parliament for an overall majority. But one thing is clear, it's going to be pretty tight between Labour and the Conservatives. And one other thing is clear as well, it will be either Ed Miliband or David Cameron who will be the next Prime Minister, regardless of whether it's hung or whatever deals are done. And I think the public have got to address that, and I think in particular, the people of Bolton have got to address the question of how well have we done out of David Cameron as Prime Minister. And the truth is, this has never been an easy place to live and work in. It's always been a hard life for people in the north, but it's been a lot harder this last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, we had the historical, I remember my dad coming in the 60s, and many of our viewers and listeners, come from BME backgrounds, and most of their parents came in the 60s or late 50s. They all worked in the mills, they were invited to come here, and it was great. I mean, I remember so many people saying how good it was in England, and you could walk in and out of jobs even in the older brothers' time, but like you say, the mills have shut down, the northern towns have been let down, I think, by, central government, and North has just demised, hasn't it? So it's been tough here, and like you say, it's up to people now. But so many people don't vote, and that is a shame, and we're trying to address that with this show as well. I mean, even, the local community centre that I run, Hibbert Community Centre, we were supported by the Electoral Commission a few years ago to work with Asian women on, the basics of voting, boundaries, what's a councillor, how many councillors per ward, what's a ward, not just handing your votes over to, your husbands or whatever, because you can't, be cared, about who you vote for. So there's a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done.
There's so many of your constituents who won't vote, not just for you, but for nobody.
No, that's right, because they don't feel... sometimes it's because they've never voted and they don't feel that it matters that much. But the reality is that on the 7th of May, they will have a kind of 1 in 5 years opportunity. Someone once said that the British people are imprisoned, but they're free on election day. Because on election day, you can decide which politician you get. And politicians take notice of people who vote for them. Politicians don't take any notice of people who say, I'm not voting. Because in a politician's mind, if you're not voting, you don't really matter. But if you're voting, then you really count. And that's why people should make sure on the 7th of May, they should vote. And I say that regardless of what they vote. It's important that they vote. I'd rather they voted Labour, and I'd rather they voted for me. But it's important that they vote.
Well, thank you very much. And, that is, the election date is the 7th of May. And as David
that's a fortnight on Thursday.
There you go, only a couple of weeks away. And as David rightly said, it's important that everybody votes, regardless of what party you vote. Obviously, David wants you to vote for a certain party, but I mean, from B-Buzz channel, we want people to understand, that not just the general election, but even your local areas. Every area has 3 councillors representing you, and it's up to you who you get. It's no good sitting back afterwards and saying, there's nobody does nothing for our area and the potholes. We can all complain about everything, but the power, as David said, is in your hands on those election dates. So thanks for listening, everybody, and thank you very much, David, for coming on and giving us your time. I know you're a busy man, especially now. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. Once again, you can see us on BritAsianBuzz.com. You can phone in 435 825. Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. There's an app that you can now download, am I right? And it's Bebuzz Radio. So you can download that on your Android phones and you can listen to us or watch us on YouTube from that anytime you like. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening. Thank you again, Dave.
Thank you.
All right, bye.